Hello and welcome to this episode of the MediaTech Podcast. Today we are with Malcolm. He is the head of the Animation VFX program here at MediaTech Dallas. And we're going to give a little overview of what you might expect if you're going to come through the program here. So Malcolm, glad to have you. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me onto your podcast. I'm trying not to look directly at the camera all the time. I will. I hope it doesn't creep people out.
Well, about half of them are listening on iTunes. So.
Oh, okay.
So if you wouldn't mind giving a little background about your experience with Animation VFX and then the film industry in general and what brought you to MediaTek.
I really wanted to get into film when I was younger. Now, I'm a lot older. I'm 37, so when I was in high school, they didn't have all these types of things. So I kind of left thinking, I'm not going to be able to get one of those types of jobs. And then I did a HND, which is a British qualification in journalism, and then decided to drop out of that. And I decided the only course that I could get into that had a little bit of filmmaking experience was an animation course. So I had no plans to do animation, but I did it and I loved it, and I made a short animated movie. My 2 years that I did the HND in animation and filmcraft, the course was called, and that led me to get an award for my thing, and then for my short that I made, and then through that I just kind of made industry connections, started working with people. There's a TV station in Scotland called STV, which is Scottish TV, and I used to animate the adverts for them, which led to me copywriting the adverts for them. In fact, one of the stories, and tell me to stop rambling as well, because I will ramble on and on. But the reason why I got into writing and copywriting was I was asked I pitched this idea of like a war poem for an advert for people who have been injured in the war, and I said, we can have a lovely war poem over it. And so the client said, that's really good, and what I didn't know is all war poems are very anti-war, so you don't want that in one of these things. So I wrote my own war poem, and they loved it, and they said, we need to get clearance for this, and they said, well, who wrote it? And I said, me. So I got more and more copywriting work, and then that led to me going away and getting a master's in screenwriting. And then I followed that up with, I went to the BBC and I trained as a script editor for a year at the BBC, and then I went on to work on shows like Waterloo Road and Doctor Who, and then I moved to Dallas and I got involved with real effects in some of their development work, and a bit of development work for Brazen Animation, and also write things. I've got a go on YouTube, and there's a short I wrote called Alternative Math. It was Oscar qualifying, and it's now got, I think, 6 million views. It was a great success, so I know I'm trying to write a feature based around that. So
wow.
That's me.
That's awesome.
Was that concise?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Awesome. So I guess you stepped into it more from the screenwriting perspective through your career, or?
I did. I mean, like, I have had various odd jobs. That was my abridged version. I also used to teach animation in Scotland for the council there. I used to go to schools and teach animation there. I made a short movie using After Effects as well that is a puppet and me on green screen called Picawalago, which everyone hated. But I'm very immensely proud of it. It's out there somewhere on YouTube. So I've done various things. Sorry, did that answer your question?
Absolutely, yeah. That's awesome. So how did you get to MediaTek specifically?
I know Wes. My her best friend growing up is Wes's wife, Amanda. And I started coming into meetings here just to kind of help say, like, what could we do to they invite industry people in, which is a great thing about MediaTek, to ask, how can we do this better? How are we going to get these kids out and get them jobs and all that kind of stuff? And so I was being asked all those questions, and then I can't remember what happened. I guess someone either dropped out or a new course was made. I came in specifically to teach Photoshop. That's all I used to teach in the first semester. I taught Photoshop. Second semester, I taught, it's kind of like storyboard, movie appreciation, character designs, and concept art and all that kind of stuff, which was kind of like the next level up from Photoshop. So yeah, I just came, maybe someone dropped out who was doing Photoshop. I have great experience in Photoshop, so that's maybe why they asked me in. So
that's awesome.
That's how I came in. I don't know why I looked to the microphone instead of the...
So I went to MediaTech. I graduated in 2013, and it was really different back then. I graduated in the film program, and my education was awesome, but it was a little bit laid out differently back then. I'm not sure if you're aware, but instead of having several classes at a time, it was just one class for a whole semester each time. So it was like 101 was a semester, 201 all the way to 5 or 601. And please excuse if you're listening to this, we're in a classroom and there's very loud AC above us. So when there wasn't as much of a focus on After Effects or VFX or animation at that time. And my first job was at a local ad agency as, quote, a video editor, which was misleading kind of because, especially in Dallas where everybody's kind of a generalist, I didn't anticipate the amount of After Effects and stuff that I'd be doing on a day-to-day basis. So when I learned that MediaTech was putting together that program, it was very exciting for me because that'll prepare people so well for, you know, the professional world, especially if they take both film and animation, which I'm not sure how many do that, but that would really set you, you know, for the professional world.
Yeah, I think the film students here have they have a one day a week After Effects that they're kind of doing. It's interesting. In the first semester you get the basics of After Effects. Second semester it kind of ramps up a little bit more. And the third semester is kind of all about finding out what you want to do.
That's awesome.
So I've been the only teacher for the third semester. So we do have advanced 3D. Cinema 4D is the 3D package we use. We have advanced special effects for After Effects. We have a portfolio class. We have 2D animation. And then the other class that we have out the 5 days a week is our final project. And you get to pick what your final project is. So the students that I had, they want to do this sci-fi thing with special effects. And so it's very After Effects heavy, but it's also they're modeling things and then tracking them and putting them into After Effects. So it's funny, in the third semester it's all kind of blended a little bit more. It's like if we haven't finished that, we might do After Effects on our day for 3D because we could pick that up elsewhere. So it's all blended in the last one, which is probably similar to your classes when you were back then. But what they have is in the first semester and the second semester, they've learned all the basics and stuff, and it's just about playing about with it and being creative. You know, from these softwares, it's really about experimenting in them and all that kind of stuff. So third semester is a lot of fun, I think, for a lot of the students because they just get to experiment and find out what their passion is. You know, it's interesting how someone could come into this course and be like, I want to do games, and then they're like, oh no, I actually like to do this other thing. I really like Photoshop, or So it's about discovering your passion as well, and we don't try and push people in either direction. The third semester is they get to decide what do I want to work on for the last semester.
So being that it's Cinema 4D, I guess the program really leans more toward the VFX side than the character kind of animation side, or?
It does. I mean, you can do character animation in it. The only problem is this is a year course, an intensive course, and you can't teach something like Maya.
Yeah.
Which really, if you want to go into character animation, it's Maya. But I think Cinema 4D is a really good starting point anyway, because a lot of these interfaces are all the same. So it's good to go into that. And in Dallas, there's a lot of companies that will work with Cinema 4D because of the kind of quicker way you can work around it. You know, if you need a mobile phone for an advert or something, it's Cinema 4D rather than Maya. So I think it's a good place to start, but it is just a starting point, unfortunately, the Cinema 4D. But I think it's great as well. We've been doing a lot of different stuff in it. So
absolutely. And like you said, for an intensive course, giving you that really strong foundation is awesome. So what kind of prospective student, like what would you say is the perfect person and looking what they want to do in their career to consider your course at MediaTech?
Oh, that is a good question. I mean, like, we are an entry-level course, so there's I guess there's two prospective people. You give me a difficult question, I'm going to give you a difficult answer. But the first one is someone who comes out of school and is like, I want to get into the industry, but how do I do it? They have this intensive year course. I mean, the other thing we do is we go out on field trips to meet a lot of people and network and all this kind of stuff. And as you know, it's more who you know than what you know a lot of the time. I guess it's also what you know. So I don't know why I said that. But so there's someone who could do this in a year and then find themselves an entry-level job. Or the second person would be someone who's like, okay, I want to go to college to do this, like learn Maya or just focus on lighting or something, but this is a great starter course for them. Because again, it's like, we all do need to be generalists in some way, so maybe this is a great course for people who want to start their journey, learn all the basics, and then move on to, higher education at a college or something where they focus on one thing specifically. I guess it would also be good for film students who want to learn, special effects and graphics and all that kind of stuff.
Definitely, and like I said earlier, I did not anticipate how much motion graphics there is in just day-to-day generalist video editor work, And when I entered that company, I just expected to be in Premiere all the time and do nothing else. But man, it was more than half was After Effects, because it was for small TV commercials, like regional TV commercials, predominantly, unfortunately, car dealerships. I mean, if you look at any of those, you'll see that there's editing there, but probably 65% of the time the editor spent was in After Effects doing that.
No, exactly. You think about those car adverts, a lot of them are the guys on green screen saying, hey, I'm Big Al at Big Al's Car Yard.
And then there's an explosion and it takes
you
to
there's
the
an
car
explosion,
yard,
then there's tracked graphics as we look at the cars and stuff. So it's a great thing to learn all the basics of these things, for the industry. So you can communicate with the other people who are doing the different things.
Absolutely. So let's get into a little bit more detail, sort of semester by semester. So what can they expect out of their first semester?
First semester basics. There's going to be some people who want to come in and hit the ground running. And that's great because you can have as much time as you want at home and you have support from the teachers here to pursue that passion. But there may be some other people in your class who aren't they aren't picking things up. So we go through the basics of what some people may find boring, but I think is very interesting. I'll talk for myself with the Photoshop. We do Photoshop, we do After Effects, we do Illustrator, and we do Adobe Animate as well, which is kind of like it used to be Flash. I'll just speak from what I taught in with the Photoshop is we will first of all just look at the layout of the things. We might practice drawing on Wacom tablets. We will look into colorizing photos. We'll look into taking old ripped up photos and cleaning them up and all that kind of stuff. I guess it's a bit like, when sorry for this analogy, when Mr. Miyagi made the Karate Kid paint his fence, and it's like, this is boring, I want to learn Kung Fu, and then he attacks him, and all the stuff that he's learned has made him better. Like, I think in the first semester you're going to be doing stuff that you're like, I really want to just draw Goku or have an explosion or something, but we're going to teach you the basics. So when you get to those things that you really want to do, especially in the third semester, as I had explained, you're going to know all the basics and know all the problem solving and all that kind of stuff. So first semester, for all those things, it may be stuff that seems unimpressive, but it's the basics. You need to learn the basics, and it makes you so much better down the line. So for my Photoshop class, as I said, we made movie posters, we looked at text, we looked at cloning and all these kind of things that I think is really cool. Or like touching up a photo, all these photos of models. and they're slimmed down and their skin's made to look better and all that kind of stuff, we'll do that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And that will be the same for all of the different classes.
Gotcha. And so what about heading into semester number 2?
Semester number 2 gets more fun because you get to... So again, what I taught in semester 2 was the next level from the Photoshop thing. It was picking a project. So one of my students picked a video game that they've always thought about that they wanted to make. And then we used Photoshop to design the characters in the game. Cool. Design concept art for the... design concept art for the game as well. And then we did this wonderful, it's like an online Pixar course. We looked at kind of storyboarding and visual storytelling. Obviously this is a animation course, so we don't go so in depth into film and shots and all this kind of stuff, but we went into that and we made storyboards for what would be, for this student it was a trailer for his game, how you're going to sell this idea and all that kind of stuff. So that was them getting the chance to start thinking, what do I want to make and how do I make it? So it's kind of like the in-between to the third semester where you really have total creative control of everything you're doing. For the other classes, I think, because I didn't teach them, I think they went into just more in-depth After Effects. Like, I think they made a music video or something, cool. And timed it to the music. And I think they had a little bit of Premiere in that semester. And I'm trying to think of the other classes. Sorry, I didn't teach them, so I would need to have had a look back and saw what was being taught.
Well, cool. Can you speak, before we move on a little bit, to the importance of After Effects, I guess, in general? Because I don't think a lot of people understand how... necessary it is on a day-to-day basis, even if you're not like an animator,
Yeah, I think it's one of these cool... When I first ever discovered After Effects, I was like, wow, it's like all my favorite programs in one. It's like Photoshop, it's like Illustrator, it's got a bit of 3D and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, I do think it's... I mean, there's obviously other... If you're talking about like super Hollywood blockbuster effects, it'll be like Houdini or something. Yeah. But there's always people who need After Effects. And when I was discussing the boring stuff, teaching the boring stuff, it could be that, like in some shot, someone has left a Coke can on the counter and it's like, we can't have that Coke can in shot. I mean, they should have done this in Game of Thrones with that.
Right, the Starbucks cup.
Yeah. So someone can mask that out in After Effects. And it's boring. It's like, oh, well, I'm not blowing up a building or something. But, there's a job there for that kind of stuff. I think that kind of stuff's cool, taking things out or even just color correcting things. Or I think it's an essential tool for any filmmaker to know what that software can do. And yeah, I love it. I love teaching it. It's a big part of this course. Did that answer, or do you want a follow-up question?
No. Okay. I think there's a dreaded question that any, especially freelance videographer, gets from a client is, can you paint that out?
Yeah.
Or paint that in. It's the worst if you don't know how to do it. And there's so many people that just get scared from that question because they were never trained to do that. And it's not that difficult to process, assuming that it's not a super drastic paint,
Yeah.
But anyway, let's roll into semester 3. So you said it's really kind of liquid and they could kind of choose what their passion is. So if you can go into that a little more. So
I can go into it totally because I taught all the classes in semester 3. So we on Monday have we have 2D animation. Now 2D animation, we just ended up doing the stuff in After Effects, but they have the choice. In fact, the other thing we used was I don't know if you've ever heard of Character Animator. Yeah. Where it's a 2D animation, but you can almost rig it like a 3D model and then move it. And when you speak, it speaks and all that kind of stuff, which is great because I discovered that when we started and I was like, let's look into this. And you can stream live with it and all that. We could do this podcast with those Character Animator things, if I had shown up looking horrible, you could have just put a toad puppet in instead of me. But so we did that. That then progressed. Monica, who's on the film, she teaches documentary, I think. She's on the film side of things here. She is doing a short documentary, and she asked for some 2D animation for it. So I suddenly was like, this is great. This will be like a client that they're working for, but they can do it in class. So they've just wrapped up with their animations for that. They used After Effects with a little bit of a mix of Character Animator, and they're going to get IMDb credits and get to go to the premieres and networks and all that kind of stuff. So that's what we did on Monday. That's the only exception because there was no fluidity to that. Monday is for 2D. Tuesday we do Cinema 4D and 3D modeling. And at the start of the year, we started looking how to model more complicated things. And then as it went on, it did get more fluid. Wednesday is the big final project, which we sat down first of all and we kind of brainstormed ideas. We said, what do we want to do? You know, there was an option that it could have been a 2D animation. It could have been that we went to a company outside of here and we did work for them as and they're our client or whatever, but they decided, we want to do a kind of short thing that showcases all the kind of visual effects and 3D models that we want to make. So we picked that, we wrote down a script, we did a storyboard, and then we started making all the things for it and testing all the kind of footage. We tested the green screen and all that kind of stuff. And then on Thursday, it's advanced special effects. So that played into a lot of this stuff. We went down and we looked at how to film on the green screen, and we looked at how to get certain effects for the big movie or the big I mean, I say big movie, I think it's 1.5 minutes is the final thing, but it's really cool. There's a lot of people jumping into teleporters and electrocuting things, and it's awesome. And so on Thursday, that very naturally blended into their idea, and okay, we're going to start testing this and testing the green screen and testing like how we're going to film this practically or whatever. Friday, I think, is really fun. It's portfolio. So we look at what is going to be make a really good portfolio. We look at what's going to be a really great show reel, or to show people. But we had a lot of really cool trips to different companies. So we went to Real Effects, which also houses Flight School, which does kind of like VR more than anything. And then we went to Brazen, and we went to Element X Creative, which is, I don't know if you've been there. It's a really cool building. And all the people we met were just so helpful, and we asked them like, well, what do you look for when like someone's trying to sell themselves, and what do you look for in a show reel, or what do you look for in a portfolio or whatever. So kind of Fridays was like, how are we going to present ourselves to the industry, but sometimes it would be like, okay, well, we don't have any special effects or footage yet, so just work on your project, and then you can put it into your show reel at some point. So that's kind of how it was fluid. But the other thing, which the students, I think they do get it, but the other thing is we want them to get jobs, and we want them to meet people, and we want them to start thinking about who they are and how they're going to sell themselves. So that's the secret part of the third semester. They think I trick them into thinking that they're like, we're getting to be creative and do whatever we like, but at the same time I'm kind of pushing them into being like, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to do 3D? Do you want to do special effect? And then we're meeting all these different people in the industry, and they're giving them their 2 cents, and it's kind of slowly shaping them into thinking, how do I position from this course to something else.
That's awesome. So semester 3, the final semester for
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Have there been any sort of real notable projects that you've seen come out of that semester other than that sci-fi one?
No, the sci-fi one's really the big project that they've been working on, but the other one is the 2D animation, which I think has been fantastic. It looks great, and these two guys did not like anything to do with 2D, and they've pumped out some fantastic work, which cool. I think they're surprised with.
Character Animator is so much fun to work with.
It really is. It really is. It takes time to set the stuff up, but once it's set up, it's like you've got that.
Yeah,
forever to do whatever you want with.
I've heard they did a live stream of The Simpsons or something like that. Like,
oh, really?
It was live on TV, and they was responding to someone in live action, and that's how they did it. Was just live streaming out of Character Animator.
I think that's and I remember the Jim Henson Company had some show where it was like the character is 3D, but he's being puppeteered in real life, and then they had like, what was it? Is it Adina from the Incredibles?
Oh.
Did she not present a award at one of the
Oscars or something, right?
So that was live. That was live action. That was streamed live. I think that person was animating. Well, no, I mean that's kind of like the future. I think of how are things going to evolve? As you said, when you came on to this, it was more like, hey, animation's everything or whatever. I don't know. And now it's like there's so many paths and choices, and yeah, streaming I think is a very interesting one because we live in this YouTube culture now. I don't understand YouTube stars. I don't know why they're famous. This is what makes me old, but I do understand like it's the immediacy of the internet that people want, and I think that's exciting. Like, where is animation going to go? And the fact that you can make a character now and stream live as your character, or it's fantastic.
Does that scare you at all? I mean, that just sounds.
Everything scares me. Life scares me. Death scares me. No, it doesn't. I think it's wonderful that things will change, and you got to flow with these things and leave the doors open. And like Disney doesn't do 2D animation anymore.
It's heartbreaking, man.
Yeah, it is kind of heartbreaking because it was such a beautiful art that they had finessed into. Those 2D films are works of art, and now they do 3D.
I know. Yeah,
it's just the times.
It is, and I mean, we're about to wrap up here in a second, but you were mentioning YouTube. I don't know if you've heard of the YouTuber named Amy Yamato.
I have heard the name, but
she's insane.
Oh, wait a second. She was in Ralph Breaks the Internet. Okay, maybe she was. Does she wear all this lipstick?
No. She's completely. It's the most strange thing at first, but she's a vlogger where she like vlogs her life, right? And she completely paints herself out and paints in a 3D animated model of her.
Oh, okay.
It's the craziest thing, and it must take her forever. But you were mentioning the future and YouTube and all that. You should check her out. It's almost like it gives you a headache wondering how much work goes into that for YouTube videos.
I need to check her out. I've heard the name somewhere, but
Amy Yamato. But anyway, well, thank you so much for your time, Malcolm. It's really exciting to hear, and I love that MediaTech's grown into that program. Like I said, it seems super valuable, especially in Dallas, where it's such a culture of everybody has to be a generalist to get reasonable work. Whereas, in Hollywood and otherwise, it's very specific. Like you do one thing, but here you need to be able to do a wide variety of things. So it's awesome that you'll have such an intensive course to launch you right into it. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
No, but it is interesting because I think Hollywood is shrinking and I think other places are growing, but it's more complicated than that. But I would say if it's like Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. So if we have enough industry people here doing things and making interesting projects here, why can't this be Hollywood? Why do we, I don't know. Live streaming from their bedrooms with Character Animator and all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
It's interesting to see where it goes in the next 20 or more years,
Exactly. Holograms. Holograms.
That's an excellent
That's all I'm going to say because it sounds futuristic.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for listening or watching this podcast. Be sure to subscribe, hit that bell icon if you're on YouTube. If not, you can subscribe wherever you're listening to this. We do weekly podcasts touching all the different programs at MediaTech, and we get really granular, really detailed in some different aspects of these programs and just the industry in general. So again, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you again next week.
Bye.